As American citizens, we have an incredible amount of rights, rights that most people around the world do not have. And one of those most important rights is the right to have our voices heard, and that's the right to vote. But sadly, less than 60% of registered voters actually do use that right and vote. It is important for all citizens to vote, but it is especially important right now for us teachers to get out and have our voices heard. The right to vote did not come easily. It started during the American Revolution when we broke away from England and faced the largest military force in the world at that time. Against all the odds, we won, but sadly, right after the Revolution, only white Protestant land-owning males were allowed to vote. It was almost 100 years later, in 1870, that African American males were finally granted their rights to vote. And through incredible amounts of intimidation by beatings and murder, African American males, that right was so important to them that they continued to go out and vote. And it wasn't until my own grandmother was a teenager in 1920 that women were finally granted the right to vote. Despite all the hardships of our ancestors, many people still are not voting. In a 2016 web article by Christopher Ingram of the Washington Post, Mr. Ingram states, 100 million voters didn't even bother to show up in the 2016 election. He also says, low voting rates show a less than healthy democracy, and U.S. voter turnout is among the lowest in the developed world. That is such a sad fact. As teachers, it is very important for us to vote as well. In the 2014 article from Education Week, titled 10 Critical Issues Facing Education, author Peter DeWitt says, there are many critical education issues in politics right now that can have big consequences. Things like high-stakes testing, the Common Core, and technology in the classroom. He says politicians have used education to bolster their poll numbers by saying schools across the country are failing. And this is not an uncommon thing. This has actually been going on since the start of public education, that politicians have been using fear tactics to get the public out and voting. These politicians, although maybe well-intentioned, came up with things that have been very hard for us as teachers. Things like the 2001 No Child Left Behind, which gave us high-stakes testing. Mr. DeWitt says, as many teachers already know, high-stakes testing has not given an accurate account of student learning and has made only the tested subjects like math and English important in today's classrooms. Politicians also routinely use the Common Core state standards as a fear tactic tool right now. I'm sure we've all heard in the last election people saying that the disastrous Common Core curriculum that was created by the federal government. And as we all know, that is just not true, but that myth continues to circulate. The Common Core State Standards Initiative webpage, with an article titled Myth versus Facts, says, teachers have been and will continue to be involved in planning and implementing, and it is not a curriculum, but a set of standards for each grade level. It is so important for us to get out and tell people that, and I'm sure we've all been in an argument or heard a parent or a friend or family member talk about what they think Common Core is. And it's so easy to just not get in the fight and just nod our heads and agree, but we have to give the real side of the story. It is so important because when they're only hearing it from politicians, how are they going to know? And we are their best source because we are the ones in the classroom every day. Mr. DeWitt of Education Week says, national and state leaders are not flexible on education, and teachers need to be willing to debate what's really happening in education. That is just so incredibly important for us to do. He also says, it is critically important that teachers take control of the political conversation. So today as you came in, you all were given flyers, and those flyers give places where you can register to vote, and you can even do it online, so it's very easy. There's also a list of the local polling places for each district, and I encourage you all not to just vote at the national level with the big exciting presidential election, but to go out because what at the state and local levels, because that's where things are affecting us the most. So thank you, everybody, and I hope you all go out and vote.